What most Americans get wrong is we believe that the government is there to serve the people. What we are experiencing is almost exactly what happened to Venezuela.
You need a functional and thriving middle class for an economy and a society to be safe.
What you're seeing is a decrease in value of the US dollar. You're seeing the decline in international influence of US politicians and US power. What does that mean about your 401k, your bank account, your small business?
Andrew Bustamante, he's a very, very famous former CIA operative. You are married to, in love with, and in partnership with someone who has been trained to lie, cheat, steal, and kill.
I think with me, he felt like he could be honest.
Weakness, yeah.
Yeah, weakness, yes.
And she jumped on it.
The Epstein issue shows the American public that there is no draining the swamp.
Until you've been on Capitol Hill and actually watched these assholes yell at each other on camera and then have lunch together and give fist bumps, you don't get it.
You can't go out there and hold a sign and hope that everybody sees that you're right. You have to play the game.
Everything changes as the United States declines from its role of global superpower. You're seeing Vladimir Putin, you're seeing Xi Jinping, you're seeing people stand up in ways they've never stood up before. That is a bad thing for the United States.
Are we moving into a third world war?
Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik.
And I'm Jonathan Cohen.
And welcome to our breakdown. Have you ever thought about what it takes to work for the CIA?
All the time I think about it. I also think about World War III, the decline of the U.S., whether or not we're in a hot war, and if I should be thinking about getting another passport.
I also wonder about what kind of personality features might lend someone to be more or less trustworthy and to be open to understanding different perspectives on the level that you might make life decisions based on those different perspectives.
This episode is such an interesting mix because we talk about systemic issues that are happening, the future of democracy, how the U.S. may be mirroring Venezuela in terms of its imminent collapse, and if so, why that might be. We also touch on Epstein and what's really going on in these files. As well, we balance it with some really introspective work on how to protect your energy, what to say no, and how to learn to say no in order to make sure that you're living your life, not being subject to what other people expect of you.
Who could possibly address all of these things? Well, you may not be surprised. Andrew Bustamante and Jihi Bustamante, authors of Shadow Cell, an insider account of America's new spy war, and the founders of EverydaySpy. So Andrew Bustamante, we had on the podcast a year or so ago, and he's a very, very famous former CIA operative. His wife is also a former CIA operative. They run EverydaySpy together, and they are a fascinating couple. She comes from a very peace-loving Buddhist home and ended up entering the CIA. They met amidst her anxiety diagnosis. She used to vomit every time she saw him. We're going to hear all about that, how they ended up working together in the CIA, what they learned both as a couple and individually about who to trust and how, what the news is telling us about what is true in society. And it's a really, really fun episode where we get to talk to two different sides of a couple that has been immersed for decades in the deepest recesses of government secrets.
It's fascinating. Mayim describes it as a really fun episode. I describe it as a breakdown and an evaluation of how America got to this point, looking at the Bush administration, the power dynamic of the Obama administration, and how that led to Trump, as well as why you can't put a former president in jail and what that says about global power structure of the U.S.
We're going to be sitting in different seats today because we have two guests in the podcast studio. It's been a minute since we've had two people in the studio, but we're very excited to welcome Andrew and Jihi Bustamante to the breakdown. Before we welcome our guests, I wanted to mention, if you're listening to this, hi, and thank you. And please make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. It makes a huge difference. It's very important for metrics and all sorts of things. Just click subscribe and make sure you hit the bell notification so that you can find out when new episodes drop. Really helps our business, helps us help you see more episodes. So please, 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 please subscribe. Do it now. You can do it. Go ahead, do it. Okay. And now we will welcome our guests to the podcast.
Break it down.
Welcome, Andrew and Jihi Bustamante, to the Breakdown.
Thank you.
We're very excited to have you here in person. We spoke to you, just this half of you, last November. You have a book called Shadow Cell that you wrote together, an insider account of America's new spy war. And what's really cool about this book is you literally write it together. And when I heard about that, I was like, how are they going to combine their voice? Easily solved, because it ping-pongs between each of your voices and each of your experiences, which is especially cool because so many aspects of your lives as a couple involved things that you had to encounter as a couple, but also things that you had to deal with separately and reflect upon within the couple. So I have to say, and we'll get into more of the details of The Cell and how this sort of, in many ways, tells the story of how wars are being waged. But I also just sort of wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about what it was sort of like presenting as we both used to be in this completely other world. And this is a story of not just being a spy, but being partnership in these kinds of activities. So I'll ask you to go first. Yeah, just a little bit of perspective about sort of not just what it was like writing the book, but what this life has been like.
So I think it's been wonderful having a partner, because I think it would be very lonely otherwise. So even writing the book, we have our different perspectives and our different experiences. And I think being able to share that with somebody that I trust wholly is a powerful experience for me.
And Jihi doesn't trust anybody wholly. So she, don't think for a second she trusts me completely.
Oh, I don't think she does.
Like 98%.
I know enough about you. I can't trust you.
But I will say that it's being married to a fellow operator. I can't imagine not being married to an operator. Now that we've done it, I don't know how people do it any other way, because the only thing that stands between us is legal obligation of need to know. That's it. So anything that doesn't have that very clear need to know barrier, I get to share. And if it does have that need to know barrier, I can say, I legally can't tell you that, and vice versa, right?
But I want to know, just like on a personal level, are there moments where you realize that you are married to, in love with, and in partnership with someone who has been trained to lie, cheat, steal, and kill, and you have to decide, like, do I know what it feels like to trust that person?
So I'm going to answer first because Jihi usually lies first. I think it weighs on me all the time. When I talk to you, it weighs on me all the time that you are a trained, like, deceptive, undermining saboteur. Like, I know it. So it's hard because sometimes...
That's what all men think about their partners.
Especially after he met my mom.
Oh
And
my
he was
gosh.
Like,
And then I
"Oh."
realized there's like a genetic element of predisposition. So it's powerful. But I think about it constantly. I will admit, though, I don't think you look at me that way. I think you look at me as...
She's like, I can outspy you any day of the week. You, sir, hold nothing on me.
It's true.
Yes, it is absolutely true. Yeah, so I grew up in a family where I used to argue with Andy all the time because lying is a big deal for me. My ex cheated on me and it was a big deal. Um, but he was like, you lie by omission. And I was like, that's not really lying. Like that's how all the women in my family do it. He was like, oh no, lying by omission is still a lie. So he definitely has reasons to question me further, which is fine. And I respect that. But yeah, I trust Andy. I think he's easier to read. I think he,
To you.
to me.
Is it
Yeah.
because you've been out of the game a little bit? Was he harder to read while he was practicing?
No, I think with me, he felt like he could be honest.
Yeah.
So
Weakness,
that's,
yeah.
weakness, yes.
And she jumped on it.
And I jumped on it. I was like, I can read this guy. This is great. And after my experience with my ex, where I actually did I did a full targeting package on him even before I had ever joined the CIA. Like, I was like, okay, so I have the skills to weed out a lie if I really need to.
CIA teaches us that there's 4 categories of lies. So that's why there's an element of academia here, right?
She does the lady lying.
Lady line.
But they teach us that there's bold lies, white lies,
Mm.
lies of omission, and lies of misdirection. So Jihi will do 3 of those lies without
All before 9 a.m.
without even batting an eye. The only thing she kind of stays away from is bold
is bold
lying.
lying.
Yeah.
Which then really isn't lying at all. It's just giving partial truth.
Well, I mean, it's funny because Jonathan is a creative, and a lot of times he will see or imagine things or create things that don't yet exist, but it gives him a different perception of reality, as it were. And he'll say, well, that's what I wanted to be true. Like, I said what I wanted to be true, and I was like, but that's not true. It's not the same as true. You would not be a good CIA operative, though.
There are places where you would probably fit in very well, though, just based off of what you just said.
Tell me.
Downtown Toronto.
So keep in mind that everybody who creates our alias stocks, everybody who creates our alias identities, our cover legends, the people who actually go through the process of filling in a backstory, what we call backstopping, all of those people are largely creatives.
Yeah.
They're creatives who CIA can basically empower with the legal permission to transform reality. Actually take down one website and put up a different website. Change your whole degree, change your educational background, transform your face and your name on your high school yearbook if they wanted to.
There's a whole avenue for creatives that they do not know is possible. We found out that the CIA was using psychics to do remote viewing.
Yep.
Psychics didn't know that there was an outlet for them, and now people going through creative degrees are like, wait a second, I don't need to work for the movie studios.
Yeah.
People are saying AI is going to take over jobs. We're creating them. Creative people, you can't make a TV show, but you can write a backstory
There it is.
for a CIA operative. And if you're a psychic and you're like, what am I going to do with my life? Go work for the CIA.
And if there's anything AI won't be able to replace, it's remote viewers. That's going to be a hard thing for AI to
It's
to
true.
do.
Although we heard that maybe they're not using them as much now in the age of AI because so much information is being gathered by AI. What is the story with how remote viewers are currently being used?
So there's a lot about the metaphysical sciences, if that's the right word.
Psi phenomenon, yeah.
There's a lot about that CIA outwardly rejects, and there's an element of it that we know they have to maintain, but they can't admit that they maintain it. So I understand that sensitivity. I was never privy to any of the activities that CIA is actively doing. I was able to investigate some of the activities that they were alleged to have done, and there is a lot of really powerful evidence behind things like remote viewing that is kind of scary.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Mudwater.
Jonathan and I love Mudwater. I really love the turmeric latte. And here's a little hack. Sometimes you can add a little agave. That makes it real sweet and delicious. We love that it makes us feel energized without the jitters. And I have noticed a difference in my typical brain fog. We would go so far as to say it is the best tasting functional mushroom blend on the market and with the best results. Mudwater is a coffee alternative. It's a mix of cacao, chai, turmeric, and functional mushrooms. It gives you energy and focus without the wired feeling or the midday slump. Every single ingredient in Mudwater products is 100% USDA certified organic. It's non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan, kosher, zero sugar, no sweeteners added. All you do is drop the powder into a mug, put some water, and give it a mix. Some people go wild and they add creamer or honey, and the best part, it provides sustained energy without the spikes and crash of traditional coffee. They also have caffeine-free and matcha blends that are available, but their OG blend contains cacao and chai for a hint of caffeine and hot chocolate-like flavor, lion's mane for focus, cordyceps promotes natural energy, and both chaga and reishi support a healthy immune system. Mudwater is available at Target, Sprouts locations across the U.S. It's never been easier to grab a cup of this friendly pick-me-up. Ready to make a switch to cleaner energy? Head to mudwater.com. Grab your starter kit today. Right now, our listeners get an exclusive deal up to 43% off your entire order, plus free shipping and a free rechargeable frother when you use code BREAK. That's right, up to 43% off with code BREAK at mudwtr.com.
After your purchase, they'll ask how you found them. Please show your support and let them know we sent you. Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Thrive Cosmetics.
I tend to keep my makeup looks relatively simple during the summer. I focus on looking refreshed without going full glam. Maybe some mascara, a little blush, nothing too wild, nothing too out there. Summer's about looking and feeling your best without piling it on. Thrive Cosmetics is your go-to for a simple, clean, and radiant summer look. Minimal effort, maximum impact. Every product's 100% vegan, cruelty-free, made with clean, skin-loving ingredients that work with your skin, not against it. We love that Thrive Cosmetics gives back to a ton of causes that are important to many of us, like cancer, domestic abuse, homelessness and poverty, and racial and social justice. For every product purchase, Thrive Cosmetics donates products and funds to help communities thrive. One of my favorite products is their Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara. I get so many compliments on it. It has over 40,000 five-star reviews. It's sweat-proof for the summer with 6 shades that last all day long without clumping, smudging, or flaking. And it's super easy to remove. Comes right off with warm water without yanking out your natural lashes. Maximize your look with minimal effort. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/MBB for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/MBB.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by AG1.
We have had our morning routines down for the past 4 years now with a simple scoop of AG1. It supports our energy needs, our skin health from within, digestive regularity, food cravings, immune support, even healthy mood. Now we want to introduce you to something that has optimized our nighttime routine by helping improve sleep. AGZ is a nighttime drink with clinically studied key ingredients, including adaptogens, herbs, and minerals. AGZ is a melatonin-free formula that supports the body's natural sleep cycle. I notoriously have found it difficult to wind down before bed. I'm always like making lunch, doing things, being with my kids. AGZ helps with that and leaves me feeling more rested when I wake up, helping make the most of my days. Mix it with warm water and it has a delicious chocolate flavor. Start taking your sleep seriously with AGZ.
Head to drinkag1.com/breakdown to get a free welcome kit with the flavor of your choice that includes a 30-day supply of AGZ and a free frother.
That's drinkag1.com/breakdown to get started. So we had Angela Ford on, who, you know, she started as just like, I'm a government worker, like just like sweet little lady with like funky glasses. And she literally was recruited and they were like, oh, if you don't know how to do this, we'll train you. We're going to, and I was like, what? And then we said to her, well, did you have ability? She's like, oh yeah, I used to leave my body all the time as a child and soar into the trees. I was like, of course you did. Right. That makes sense. But what she said was that all they needed was someone, and we talked about this in our first episode, all they needed was someone kind of susceptible and pliable enough to be able to have information kind of given to them and be given directions. You know, I would not be good for that because I'd be like, why? What's happening? Tell me more. No, that's not how it works. She said they would just teach this skill. But I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that. It is kind of separate from what many people are like, oh, they're feeling into the ether and the energy and this. And to me, it's almost like more proof that there is a scientific basis for it, not just because like, oh, if the CIA is doing it, that's fine, but the notion that these are skills, just like you've talked about and just like the book talks about, there's a variety of skills that many people don't have, and there's a reason that like my dad was a teacher and you're a CIA operative and we make a podcast, right?
So I would love for you to actually weigh in on this because we talk about this in the book a little bit, but Jihi didn't want to be part of CIA. And then she ended up as part of CIA against her every effort not to. And then you excelled in that freaking place. So I think this ties in exactly to what Mayim is saying. Like there's an element of just teachability, skills, and like the learning index that CIA teaches us.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about CIA is they mold everybody who comes in. So, I mean, which I personally love because I felt like I had potential, but I didn't quite know how to hone it. And so the hiring process is so extensive, but they are looking for something very specific when they hire. And one of those is teachability. And so they can give you all of these different skills. I mean, whether it's to be a disguise, person or a targeter or, anything. And the other thing I like that you guys were just touching on is they have this enormous budget. So they have the ability to experiment with all of these things and see, does it scientifically prove out? Can it actually help us? Which I love personally.
You're making this sound very appealing.
Yeah, it's like maybe I should join. It's not too late.
I
Never
want to
too
talk
late.
about some of the stuff that's happening in the world that you two have a very unique perspective on, because you are able to, or you have experience seeing what most people don't, right? How information travels across the world, how governments are interacting, how geopolitics plays out behind the scenes. Before we get into that, sort of just wrapping the couple conversation, I'm always fascinated about how does it feel trying to be normal people after living such intense lives? It's like, the gambling addict who's like primed for a high level of adrenaline and scanning all the time, trying to now be a suburban human being. What is that like?
I miss the secrets. I will admit that for sure. I read the news and I'm like, oh, there's more behind this. I know it. And I know somebody who works in that office and I wish I could call them and ask. So for sure, I miss the people I worked with like immensely, but I also miss access to the secrets. I also find it strange when I tell people like, oh yeah, I used to work for this, because I never know.
You don't have a cover story of what you normally did? I guess now you're a public person, you can't.
Exactly. Yeah, but the first time, for example, I told my sister and her boyfriend who were
Very.
yeah,
What's
what's
I
the
don't even
word?
know what the word. Creative.
Yeah.
No, yeah, so I wasn't quite sure how that was going to go because
What did they think you used to do?
I had another government agency as a cover.
Got it.
Wait, so even your family doesn't get to know that you work for the CIA?
My parents knew. I chose to tell them, and then I had to report
Your
that.
peace-loving Buddhist parents?
Yes. Well, because when I first joined, all I had watched were the, like the James Bond and Jason Bourne movies. And I was like, if I disappear, I need somebody to know to come look
She
for me.
didn't trust them.
I didn't trust
Imagine
them.
that. She didn't trust CIA.
So I
So
told
Why
my
would
built
she?
in her own backup plan.
100%. Why would you?
So,
No,
yeah.
I feel like the idiot. I was like, I can trust them. It's
You
the
didn't tell
CIA.
anybody, huh?
I told nobody. I left that whole life behind. I flushed my old life down the toilet and I like waved as it went away. Totally different.
Yeah, well. Yeah, so for me, the initial telling, the initial coming out was always a little bit scary for me because I don't know if somebody's going to have like a very violent reaction or if somebody's going to be like, oh yeah, that's really cool. And it's just iffy. You never know these days.
Yeah, it's lonely.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my only description for it is it's lonely because nobody cares about you until they find out about CIA. And then they care about CIA, either pro or against or curious.
Mhm.
And then you're just a conduit for CIA. So it's not like we ever exist as people, it's okay, but it's lonely. It makes it so that you want to avoid conversations. You don't really want to have a lot of conversations. It's actually easier to be a public figure in front of a camera or with other public figures because at least you guys know what it's like to get approached at the airport or have someone who doesn't know you until they recognize you and then all they want to know is about your old life, not your current life.
I was watching the documentary series about the hunt for bin Laden. And it was very interesting because obviously I remember 9/11. I was in grad school at that time. Anyway, I remember every moment of that day. I remember, being glued to the news and just all the information that was like I was so tuned into it, but I had forgotten a lot of the details of the actual hunt because it took the time that it did. So it was kind of interesting watching with, my kid who's now trying to learn about this aspect of history that's, a distant memory, right? So when we were watching it, some of the operatives, like their own wives, did not know what they were doing. And even, that shocked me. One of them, he was talking about, like his daughter had like a concert or something. And he was like, I won't be there, bye. Because they were like literally, the helicopter was landing and he was, in DC monitoring it. But his own wife was like, you never show up for our child, And then finally, once they caught bin Laden, he was like, turn on the news, honey. Like, this is, and that shocked me. Like the level of subterfuge, right? That you kind of have to live in. I'm assuming that's not part of the attraction, but it is sort of part of what happens. And it is what people are fascinated about. So
I would say that what attracts people to CIA and that lifestyle is youthful. That's why they recruit so heavily. What's the average age? 20. The average age is 32, I think.
It's like mid 20s to very early 30s. They
And,
usually, like, think mid-20s is
and that's
pretty
because the
average.
vast majority of hiring is under 30.
Mhm.
And then there's a few outliers that are late 40s, early 50s, usually because of their extensive knowledge or skill set in one particular thing, finance,
Mhm.
information management, something like that. Right?
Ability to go undercover as an older person.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. You
It's
would
actually,
think that would
yeah.
play into it more, but I don't think it does.
But yeah, there's certain things that make the job predisposed to youthful, younger people.
Right.
So then you don't have mature thoughts
Right.
until you're what, 34, 35, and then you start thinking about, do I want to get married? Do I want to have kids? Do
Mhm.
I want to have a savings account? Do I want to have a retirement account? Right? Everything before then, you're totally blind to those things, and that's kind of what is in CIA's sweet spot.
Right.
You mentioned you miss the secrets.
I do.
So you read the news.
Yeah.
And what is happening? I mean, this is too broad a question, but like what is happening behind the scenes that people don't realize? How much of the news is just total propaganda and just missing 50%, 90% of the detail?
So I want to pin that on you because that's the right question. And I want
Yeah.
you to answer it honestly because he's asking the right question. How much of the news is wrong?
Well, I mean, I think if it's a proper news source and they are reporting facts, right? Like observable facts, then they're getting those right. The problem is that so much of news media isn't reporting facts, it's so much opinion. And when you start getting into the opinion, so much of that is just what's the word? Conjecture, right? They're guessing. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, just like you were saying. There's a lot of backroom conversations that are happening that the media will never see, right? What they see is what the governments want them to see. When the U.S. government or the government of France comes out and makes some kind of big, like, oh, we're doing this now. Who knows what's really happening behind the scenes? Something is happening behind the scenes, but we won't never be privy to that until the next big announcement, you know?
So, and I just want to chime in because what Jihi said there is with the very professional, journalistically sound news sources,
Mhm.
what they report that's observable is factual. Well, we all know your journalistically sound news sources are increasingly shrinking. There's probably three that you can think of, right? Like Reuters. I would say Reuters is journalistically sound. The Economist is journalistically sound.
Do you think that one political party or another is better at providing a broader clarity as to what's happening, or they're equally culpable in their facade that they're presenting to the world?
Equally culpable. Yeah, I do not think the political parties.
Until you've
Yeah.
been on Capitol Hill and actually watched these assholes yell at each other on camera and then have lunch together and give fist bumps, you don't get it. It's so twisted and
So it's all
perverted.
theater.
Yeah.
It's all theater.
It's all theater.
And in the U.S. government, it's all theater because at the end of the day, they all want the same thing.
Yep.
They all want a re-election, another term in office. They
Mhm.
all want to make sure that they don't have to go find a real job. They all want to make sure that they can vote and control their own salaries. That's really what they want. And then they want to make sure that any newcomers that come in understand this is how business is done.
Mhm.
And then the American people, we give them permission to do that because we only show up at like 30% to vote anyways. And they know that. So they know exactly who the 1 out of 3 people is that's going to show up to vote and exactly what to say to get that constituent to come out every midterm. And that's what they do when the time comes to do it.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask a difficult question that a lot of people are talking about and is probably not fair to put the weight of this question on you. What's happening with Epstein? What is it that people don't actually know?
I think the Epstein issue is so interesting because I really think it just shows the American public that the government is the government. No matter who's in there, there is no draining the swamp. You can't do it. It functions just like Andy was saying. The government functions the way it functions. Anybody new who comes in is told that this is the way it is, and you can't change it from the inside. And so it's nice for me to see the American public slowly, hopefully, waking up to the fact that we can't change it from the inside. There's nobody who's going to enter the government who can change how it functions, because once they're in there, they're in power.
If you have the head of the FBI,
Mm-hmm.
the deputy director of the FBI who potentially have control of what information gets out, who is controlling the information if not them?
Everybody in the government works in their own self-interest. So if it's not in their own interest to release the information, which is probably not, and there's also laws and regulations that probably hinder some of the things that they've been asked to do. But for the most part, they're just working in their own self-interest. And that's why nothing's going to happen, because it doesn't help them or the current administration to release that information.
The self-interest piece is the piece to understand. Because what most Americans get wrong is we believe that the government is there to serve the people. Maybe it was written somewhere, but it's not. The government is not there to serve the people. The government is there to serve the government, right? In the event of a nuclear war, as long as the government of the United States exists, then the United States exists. Even if all the people are lost.
I've seen that episode of Succession. Whoever's in the safe room is all who they care about.
Yeah.
And it's real. It's real because the government is what defines the national identity.
I don't want this to be a partisan statement, but I think before the first Trump presidency, things felt a little bit different.
For sure.
They felt a little bit different in terms of news, press, media, just even the conversations about them. I'm not like putting this on Trump, but something definitely has shifted in that it feels like, if you look at kind of political perspectives as a bell curve, it feels like news is now operating from these two tail ends, and we have kind of like the most extreme on the left and we have the most extreme on the right, which sound very similar because it's all a circle, right? And it feels like that notion of kind of a middle has sort of fallen out. And, it's paralleled by sort of like the loss of the middle class that we talk about, this kind of like stratification, based on class and things like that. But I think that there's still, for the bleeding heart liberals among us, there's still like, I'm just going to say this, like someone like Bernie Sanders, this like grouchy, crotchety, he's pretty consistent, right? And kind of seems like that renegade that, many of us thought the left could be. So many people in the Obama era, right, were like, there's a new wave of hope and we're going to all make nice, And I think of people like AOC, who I think is challenged by exactly what you're talking about, because she came in, kind of like, oh, we got like a Bernie vibe, but then like it starts teetering, and then it's like, oh, is she more right? Meaning like right-wing people now, or it's like everybody's picking on everybody. Is that just sort of the inevitability of this system? Like, is Bernie Sanders the only holdout who seems to be like riding his ship all the way into the sunset?
Well, you've got a couple things. I think that's a great question. And I think Bernie's a great example, because what you have with Bernie Sanders is somebody who's so consistent. He's even fucked by his own party.
Sure.
Right. And he is so true to his vision that he can be like sidetracked or derailed by the people he trusts, because he trusts them to be of the same vision.
Right.
And it's just a great example of how things are falling apart. I agree with you that things seem radically different post-Trump. What we learned at CIA is that we really started to see the change in the first 2 years of the Obama administration. Because in the first 2 years of the Obama administration, Obama walked in and he was young enough and youthful enough that he saw the problem and he was like, I'm not going to play this game anymore. And he took the presidential powers that were given to him by all the congressmen that didn't want to have responsibility, right? He took those presidential powers and he used them. He was the most lethal president in history using covert action, which is his wing, his right as a president, as a chief executive to use. The most lethal president in history. He was the first one to use a record-breaking amount of executive orders to push his agenda across. And when the Congress turned blue, he used that leverage to get across policy that mattered to him. Whether or not you like that he did that, that set a precedent. And then when Trump took office, he was like, well, this has already been done before. So I'm just going to do the same shit that's been done before. And you can't say that it's my fault. So that's when we started to kind of see.
Now he's really the most lethal president in a different way.
In a different way. But we have this waffling now. And it took 8 years for Obama to basically exercise these rights, these privileges is the right word. He took 8 years to use these privileges. And now we're going to be feeling the ramifications for many, many decades. As presidents have to choose to reel themselves back in, or the other two branches of government have to step up and do what they're supposed to do and be that check and balance.
It doesn't seem like we're ever going back.
There's no
think
check
we
and
are.
balance now. I mean, the Supreme Court used to be, for, again, like the bleeding heart liberals among us, like, well, at least, well, not anymore.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you that I don't think there's any going back. And I think that the amount of time it's going to take for us to find some semblance of stability is such a long period of time that we have to be asking ourselves the question, do we want to be here in the middle of all that adolescence? Or do we want to go somewhere else and exist somewhere else while the American community, while the American people figure it out?
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Defender.
Are you a trailblazer, a risk taker, someone with countless tales of epic adventure? Well, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working on it. If you're looking to take on a challenge, the Defender is too. It's a vehicle built for drivers capable of great things. Maybe they're heading towards uncharted territory. Maybe they're just heading for a weekend getaway or to the supermarket. Adventure seekers don't want to miss Destination Defender, an epic weekend festival designed for Defender owners and enthusiasts in Port Jervis, New York, from May 16th through 18th. This weekend includes inspiring talks, driving courses, chef tastings, live music. To learn more, go to DestinationDefenderUSA.com. A vehicle built for the modern explorer, the Defender 110 is built for extremes and has the endurance to take you further. It's got 5 seats with the option of 7 3D surround cameras with ClearSight ground view so you can see underneath the vehicle. Also, ClearSight offers an unobstructed rear view even when you can't see through the back window. Driver aid technologies make driving and parking simpler, and the next generation PV Pro infotainment system helps make more of your world, and intuitive driver displays are customizable to your journey. Design your Defender 110 at LandRoverUSA.com. Visit LandRoverUSA.com to learn more about the Defender 110.
Explore the Defender 110 at LandRoverUSA.com. Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by MSI United States.
Around the world, there are 257 million women who want to be using contraception but can't access it. 257 million women. Why can't they get it? Because they're young or poor or just living somewhere so remote that there are no doctors or pharmacies. MSI Reproductive Choices, our sponsor, is working to help these women because not having modern safe contraception and information leads to unplanned pregnancies, which can lead to unsafe abortions. Here's another sobering fact. In many countries, more young women die of pregnancy-related causes than anything else. The current administration cut their aid funding completely and decided to destroy contraceptives that had already been paid for by taxpayers and that affected the overall supply of birth control in Africa. So they need our help. It's very inexpensive to have a huge impact. $6.50 per year of contraception can be incredibly transformative. You can help girls stay in school, help women stay employed, and help women lead better lives. With $65, you can give 10 women contraception for a year. To give, text my first name, Mayim, to 511-511. Text MAYIM to 511-511 or go online to msiunitedstates.org. That's M as in modern, S as in safe, I as in informed. msiunitedstates.org. How many women will you help? Please give generously. Text Mayim to 511-511 today. Text fees may apply.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by BetterHelp.
I'm sure most of us are guilty of oversharing personal problems in the group chat or even with strangers. Maybe that's just me. You know, you tell the barista, the mail person, things that maybe you shouldn't. We've all been there. But how many times has that actually been the most helpful solution? Well, therapists are clinically trained and licensed to listen to you. BetterHelp's been helping people find their therapist match for over 10 years. They've got a 4.9 rating out of 1.7 million client session reviews. Our experience with therapy is we both absolutely function better independently with each other and with everyone that we work with when we both go to therapy regularly. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the U.S. A short questionnaire helps identify your needs and preferences. If you aren't happy, switch to a different therapist at any time from a variety of tailored recommendations. Fully online, you can pause your subscription whenever you need to. Switch therapists at any time at no extra cost. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp's the world's largest online therapy platform with over 5 million people served globally. It's convenient. You can join a session with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/break. That's betterhelp.com/break.
Let's get to the power structure of the world that has basically been uprooted since it was established after the Second World War, because that's what you're talking about,
Correct.
right? You're talking about the change in global power dynamic after the Second World War. And for a long time, there was American superiority, control. And what you're saying is in this infighting and instability, that's now at risk.
Correct. And it's even worth going back. You can actually see how during the first Bush administration, the policy was set in motion for other countries to start taking advantage of what we weren't focused on. So we were focused on terrorism and war on drugs and global policing.
Also known as the war on people of color.
But we were engaged in all this activity. That's where our money went. If you talk about it like an everyday person sitting at home,
Looking at their budget.
exactly.
Yep.
Your paycheck came in and you chose to put this much money towards this global war on terror. Well, that's not what your neighbor's putting their money in. And that's not what China or Russia or North Korea or Iran were putting their money into. They were putting their money into other efforts, right? And that's how we woke up at the end of the global war on terror in 2022 to a modernized China that controlled shipping and supply lanes, that controlled rare earth minerals, that controlled new loan agreements with third world countries, that had basically cloned telecommunications and had cloned the ability to make microchips. We wondered, like, how did they do this so fast? They didn't do it fast. It took them 20 years. It's just that for those 20 years, we had our heads so deep in the Middle East that we weren't focused on anything else.
And the return on investment is pretty low. Like, not that much was accomplished in terms of the progress made.
We made a lot of people hate us who might not have before.
We broke international laws, which, just like the Obama administration before the Trump administration, created a new precedent, and that empowered countries like Israel, like Syria, like Turkey, like Russia, to just completely abandon the idea, when it's convenient, of international order and international justice. It's tough.
We're going to get to global order in a second, but I want to circle back to the Epstein answer that you gave, because implicit in that answer of it not serving their interests is an implication that there is damning evidence in those files. Otherwise, it would serve them to release them.
And I'll add to this, because I know Jihi, her face just twisted. You all, it's recorded. Her face twisted.
If you're only listening in audio, she just left the room and she is in her car. That's what her face said to us. She's like, "Do not put me on the spot. I will not answer this."
My face always betrays me.
So I could be a CIA spy.
You're correct. What Jihi is implying is what she's implying intentionally. It doesn't serve it doesn't serve the interest of the people in power.
But take that to the logical conclusion.
And then why?
Why doesn't it serve them?
Now, the why is what we don't know, and that's where conspiracy lives. We don't know whether the reason the Epstein files aren't available to us is because he's got a picture hamming it up with some 14-year-old girl with the president. We don't know if that's why.
Have you been following what Michael Wolff is putting out? That guy is supposedly the Epstein biographer and making claims that, I have zero evidence to support, but he claims to be the expert and has seen Polaroids and has seen things that would be otherwise, if true, completely damning.
Yeah, but these people are so slippery. Apparently you can be in a photo with a 14-year-old girl and still be like, we were just posing for a photo. I mean, that's what happened with Prince Andrew.
Michael Wolff claims that these are topless 14-year-olds or younger, so that's a little bit harder, but doesn't imply guilt of,
And this is the legal issue, is that, and also, feeds into, does it feed their self-interest? Because the prosecutors have a lot of discretion on who to prosecute. They do not prosecute unless they have enough evidence to bring it to trial and convict. So they have to look at the evidence. And even if they have damning evidence, number one, if they think they're going to bring a case in the future, they can't let that out. Number two, if they have evidence, but there's not enough to bring the case, out to charge somebody, they can't let that information out, because how many people of power are you going to bring down with circumstantial evidence, right? Because that's what those people are going to say. That's circumstantial evidence. You don't have enough to prosecute me, and now you're defaming me.
And the thing to understand is America survived as long as the American political structure survives. All the politicians understand that. So what can't happen, and this is a big part of the reason why 2 years ago I said Donald Trump was never going to go to jail. Never. Because you can't put a former president in jail. If you were to do that, that's sending a signal to the entire world, hey, America doesn't have their shit together. Hey, we're not as stable as you think we are.
I mean, I thought electing a person who is not a politician who used to be a reality show star was already evidence of that.
And I think we're seeing that.
I clearly was wrong.
What about the convictions he has?
I think these are all great points, right? He's got a conviction in New York City or in the state of New York that clearly didn't sway the voters.
No, it made people more excited.
And what you're seeing parallel to all the stuff that people are talking about with Donald Trump, what you're seeing is a decrease in value of the US dollar. You're seeing the decline in international influence of US politicians and US power. You're seeing Vladimir Putin, you're seeing Xi Jinping, you're seeing the North Korean leadership, you're seeing Israeli leadership stand up and push back against their own commitments and promises to Donald Trump, to the American president, right? You're seeing people stand up in ways they've never stood up before. And that's all indicative of the fact that people are losing confidence in the American power base. That's not a bad thing for the globe, but that is a bad thing for the United States, for the average American.
So you think his indictments in New York actually weaken the U.S. global power structure?
I think a big part of the reason that New York was willing to prosecute when so many other states weren't was because New York believed in justice
over the global power structure.
Correct. And what we're seeing now in hindsight is just what Mayim said. When you prosecuted the guy, we made him a victim. And then there was a rally cry behind him of people who, the silent majority, which is the majority that the politicians fear the most, is the silent majority. The people who don't really say what they really think. People who don't talk politics at the dinner table.
Well, they're also the people that I did not realize there were so many of them who would say, this is a disgusting person with abhorrent, you know, tactics, treats women horribly, speaks poorly about the disabled and women and people of color. But, and then insert reason here. My bank account, Israel, like meaning, you know, there's all these voters who are going to do whatever they're going to do despite all that. And for me, like, you know, I was like raised as like this hopeful, like grandchild of immigrants of like, we're the greatest country in the world. We're the melting pot. Just be a good person, you know? And for a lot of people that, that's not their driving force. I'm not saying they're not good people.
Right.
In many cases, I do believe. I mean, I think we have to believe that, or we're a completely divided nation, that many well-meaning, good-natured people were willing to gamble those certain aspects of things that they may believe in for a leader who, again, fill in the blank of what you needed your president to do for you.
And let's not forget that the alternative, because we're America, we only gave ourselves one alternative.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Right? That we were stuck between two bad choices.
Yeah.
And I think all Americans understood that. And I think your point is right on the nose.
I don't like to call Kamala bad.
We are well-meaning. Right? All people are well-meaning.
No, the Democratic Party stepped in it and is still having trouble recovering. And that also has shocked me. Like, there doesn't seem to be a spiral that the Democratic Party can come out of.
And that's hard. In a weird sort of parallel, the Republican Party is also in a spiral that they didn't create.
Yep.
And they also don't know how to get out. They're like in a whirlpool that's just sucking them in.
There's a lot of complicit and I think really disgusting things going on. And, you know, it's exactly evidence of what you said, what, you know, my cynical liberal parents told me. You know, people will always, you know, like they'll always cower to power, to money, to greed. You can't trust anybody, right? I didn't want to believe that was true. But when I see certain, you know, Republican leadership really failing to step up, like to me that denigrates the whole system.
I would also say that it reaches beyond just the two parties. It's international. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter where you went to school, if you went to school. It doesn't matter what part of the country or what part of the city you're in, anywhere in the world. You can count on certain inevitable truths. And one of those is that human beings will pursue their own self-interests. We are still biologically wired to do what we believe will help us survive. We have not yet evolved cognitively to the place where we're willing to accept that we might actually thrive if we were to take different actions.
I 100% agree with you, and it is an evolution. I want to circle to your comment on you can't put a U.S. president or former U.S. president in jail, and the Supreme Court has basically upheld that and supported that by saying anything done in the presidential act can't be prosecuted. Doesn't that put us further and further towards dictatorship?
Absolutely. I would love for you to weigh in on this, because we talk about, this is what happens Welcome to the Bustamante family dinner table.
This is just dinner with the Bustamantes. That's the episode.
This is what we talk about, over our shared glass of scotch or whatever else is, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What is the new precedent that we're setting for the future? And what you're saying is exactly right. This puts us on a path where how can we really be a just nation?
Because it used to be that, even the guise was that the U.S. president was acting on behalf of the country, not merely just
the party
or themselves or their family.
Right. Even the guy you didn't like. I talk about, I think my dad voted for Kennedy, and that was like the last person he voted for, and yeah, there was this notion. I remember the Reagan years, and it was like, oh, this sucks. And like, oh, they're not helping poor people. Like that was the conversation. It wasn't at the level that it is now when I talk with my kids, where everybody's like screaming at each other and crying and, like over what is happening to this country. Like, what does this government represent?
Well, I mean, when I joined the agency, I grew up in a very liberal family as well. And we were all, a melting pot and hope and peace and, we're Buddhists. So when I went to law school was the first time I started really broadening my perspective and becoming centered. And when I was at the agency, the same thing happened. I became more and more centered. And when I voted for Obama, I was really excited for President Obama.
We went to
the inauguration, the first inauguration. Yeah. But over the course of his 8 years, there were things he did that I did not agree with. And that was the first time where I was like, I liked this guy, but he is doing stuff that I really disagree with. And every president since then, whether I voted for them or not, has done things that I'm like, okay, let's see how that goes. Or I really kind of think that's a bad idea. So I do think that we have been on a trajectory. Like democracy was always an experiment. They say it in the history books, right? And when they first created our government, the president had like almost no power because the Congress was supposed to take care of it. We are a representative republic. They're supposed to represent us and make the decisions for us. But over time, the president has gained more and more power, which now reflects the governments that South America has, that Latin America has. Strong executives, weak Congress. If that's the direction America wants to go, then
that's inevitable.
Then that's inevitable, right? Then that is the choice that Americans are making today. If this is not the direction we want to go, we need to do something about it as voters, as the public, because Congress, we can see, Congress is not going to change it on its own. We are on this trajectory until the American people step up and say, this is not the America we want.
How would you like me to step up, though? Like, I don't know how many signs I can hold up and how many pussy hats I can wear. I mean, literally, and I think this is like what a lot of people are feeling fatigue about, in particular, people who do align with more liberal values. Like, many people are leaving the country.
Yeah.
And to me, that also feels like, gosh, I don't know. I mean, for me, this is the place we came to because no one else would take us. Like, that's my family story. Yes. So like, I'm American. This is like, I'm a citizen of nowhere and everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know what marching does. My parents did it against Vietnam and, and that was a thing. But it's like, I watch everybody marching. I'm like, we're marching for Instagram. Like, with all due respect, it's like when people show me the marches they went to, it's like, look at my cute costume I wore. And I'm like, what's happening?
So Andy knows that I have a horrible person inside of me.
There's a very evil person.
A very evil person
Can we
inside
speak to that person now?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
So my advice is that you have to play the game. When I first went into college, I was very hopeful. And I thought, I can change things from the inside. I can play the honest game and still win. That is not true. You have to play their game. The reason that the conservative right has gotten so far is that they have spent the last 20 years prepping. They have strategically used court cases to change law. They have strategically invested money into people that hold the values that they want to propagate, right? That's what you have to do. You can't go out there and hold a sign and hope that everybody sees that you're right and we'd all be better off if, we sang Kumbaya together. That's not going to work. You have to invest time and money and have a good strategy to shift hearts and minds. and laws?
I would say that there's, to your point about people leaving, there's, by and large, I think there's two ways that we can affect change. One is do what's best for you. And if what's best for you is leaving, I understand that your family's story was one story, but that doesn't mean it's your story, right? You are a standout person in so many ways. You can write a whole different future for yourself and for your kids. The more that we stop holding on to the past and the more that we realize that we're actively writing the future, if we make that a very personal choice, people will notice. The UK is struggling right now because people become millionaires in the UK and then you know what they do? They leave the UK. So the UK is watching wealthy people leave and go somewhere else. Same thing's happening in the United States right now. Every person I know with a net worth of $5 million or more, if they know me well enough that we have this conversation, they have property, investments, or plans. Maybe they even hold already a second passport or a golden visa to go somewhere else. They're not exclusively American and an American passport with hopes and dreams that are tied to the American economy. They are diversifying their lives, not just their portfolios. And that's important because as the government watches people be incentivized to leave, they're going to do everything they can to try to bring those people back or claw back what they can from those people. Because you're right, that the middle class is being crushed.
Let's game this out a little bit. Because we talk a lot about, we're moving into dictatorship. And I think a lot of people, they're like, it doesn't mean anything to them, right? They're like, okay, some of my rights are being taken away and this is just how government works. And it's always a crisis from this generation to that generation. And this is just the next version of that, right? But what actually happens? Because we're talking about the destabilization of the currency. We're talking about potential uprising, violent uprising. Like, why are people that have $5 million leaving?
Jihi's family's lived through this. Jihi's family is from Venezuela. Like, her father was born in Caracas, like left as a Venezuelan citizen, became an American citizen, because what we are experiencing is almost exactly what happened in Venezuela. And it's not violent. That's the most insidious part of it. It's not violent. It's not abrupt. It's slow, viral kind of infection. So in a nutshell, as the American dollar loses power, it incentivizes other countries to decouple from the American dollar or to diversify into currencies other than the American dollar, whether that's the Japanese yen or whether that's the Chinese renminbi or whether that's you name it, whatever currency they choose to diversify into. And keep in mind, China for a long time wasn't part of the World Bank. Their currency was never part of that basket. It was only in the last 15 or 20 years that they became part of the basket that is, part of the IMF. So that brought them legitimacy, and that's legitimacy there that is increasing for the Chinese currency and legitimacy that is decreasing for the US dollar. So as the US economy reduces its power, whether you count that in GDP or PPP or currency value, whatever, as the United States decreases, other countries are increasing, whether that's one country like China or whether that's a group of countries like the BRICS nations. So you have a superpower that's decreasing and a rising power that's increasing. What that means is that the parity between the two countries is getting closer and closer, which means other countries are becoming more and more wealthy and successful, while Americans are becoming less and less wealthy and successful. At some point, you're going to reach equality. Equality is the peak of conflict. Equality is the peak of conflict. There's a promise out there that equality is going to make everybody happy. Equality just makes everybody hungrier to get a little bit ahead of their competitor. Right now, no one's trying to compete with the US except for one or two countries, right? What we call global power competitors, GPC countries. When the time comes that the United States is basically at paradox with China, that means Americans have to learn Chinese. It's not an option anymore, right? That's why
We don't like to learn any language except English.
if you look at the languages spoken around the world, only 25% of all the people who speak English are native English speakers. 75% of the people who speak English worldwide learned it as a second or third language because they knew they needed it for success.
That's how we knew we're winning. I mean, that's what people would say.
At a minimum, just imagine that your grandkids might have to learn Chinese, not by choice, not as an elective, but because if they want to have a career as an adult, they have to learn Chinese. That's a scary thought, and that's a very simple thought to understand. If that's what they have to learn to speak, what does that mean about your 401k? What does that mean about your bank account? What does that mean about your small business? What does that mean about policy that's being levied that impacts everything from your healthcare to your job to your minimum wage? everything changes as the United States declines from its role of global superpower.
Yeah, and so my first professional job was with a nonprofit organization who began by working with Holocaust survivors, and then it expanded its services to work with torture survivors and refugees. And so that exposure made me realize that, just like Andy was saying, it doesn't happen quickly. It's always a slow burn, and there are always signs along the way. I mean, if you look at, from the time that Hitler took power to when things were really obviously bad, it was a couple of years. And there were things happening all along the way that, people either thought, well, it can't get any worse than this, or they were like, well, maybe we'll wait it out a little bit longer because I don't want to uproot my business. And then next thing you know, it's too late. So, for me, and then my family's from Venezuela, and we watched that happen too, and it was a slow burn of everything.
Give us a
getting worse
little
and
thumbnail
worse.
for people who haven't followed it or don't know the history.
Yeah, so Venezuela Venezuela used to be
1980s,
70s, 80s.
late 70s, early 80s.
So it's an oil country. They had lots of oil money. It's a beautiful, beautiful country, amazing people, amazing food. But over time, there was a bigger and bigger gap between the wealthy and the poor in Venezuela are really, really poor. So over time, because of that gap, eventually Hugo Chavez was brought to power because so many people were suffering. And I think people forget that that people can only suffer and be oppressed for so long before they are going to make a change, either through uprising or voting, and voting, a strong-armed president into power who says, I will take care of it. I will take care of you. I will take care of all of your needs. And that was the promise from Hugo Chavez.
And the country was, people were suffering and almost they were brainwashed. They just needed something to believe in, and
Yes.
they empowered someone to take care of these problems, whether or not he had their best interest in mind or not.
Exactly.
And the
so-
Chavez administration was buying votes in essence,
Yeah.
Mhm.
like buying it with promises, buying it with eggs, buying it with milk and bread,
Yeah.
because at the
They were
time
cheap.
the country was such that every vote was equal.
Mm.
Yeah.
So if you get a vote from a poor, uneducated person who doesn't even understand what they're voting for, or whether you get a vote from an educated elite, doesn't matter. The vote is still a vote.
Right. And so, he's voted on all these promises, and there's this legitimate suffering that's happening, but because the previous administrations never tended to it, now we have somebody who's basically inept at running a country, and everything tanks. He makes everything state owned. He takes the PDVSA, which is the oil company. He kicks out all the foreigners who were doing the oil processing and the, finding the oil, things like that. All of their other sources of income, he made it state run. Nobody really knew how to do it because it was his cronies, and the whole country tanks. And now
Massive
everybody's
inflation.
poor. Yeah.
Their currencies devalued. Anyone who had savings lost everything.
Lost everything.
And millions of people left. Anybody who could leave, it was a complete brain drain. It was a complete money drain. And now everybody who's left there they're all suffering the
And
same.
now decades later, it's not any better.
Right.
And that's the thing that we need to understand, is that so much bad can happen in such a short period of time, but it takes such a long time to build something good and robust. I don't believe that our country's doomed, but I do believe that, just like you're saying, we are at a place where the conversations that we have around our dinner table, the conversations that we have with our teenage children, are way more mature and radical than we ever had when we were teenagers. And that should be a sign that we have to ask ourselves, what kind of conversations do we want our children having with their teenagers? And what can we do now to shape those conversations then?
I think what you're talking about in terms of strategy and going after, in a legislative way, impact and how to have impact is important. But what are some of the signs that you're looking at that are happening in the US, not to, again, fearmonger, but to sort of parallel and understand where we are? For example, the privatization, is that equivalent to having impact where our allies are no longer allies and we're treating them in a way economically that is pushing them away? Like, what are the things that you're seeing currently in the US that are causes or red flags?
For me, it's a large part of it is the currency, what's happening to the US dollar, the fact that the currency isn't stable, and the fact that other countries are learning how to make their currency more attractive. by kind of turning to a more pragmatic term of agreement rather than an ideological term of agreement. What I mean by that is the United States for a long time since World War II has basically said, if you want to do business with us, you have to believe in democracy and you have to fit these certain rules. We even have rules about like anti-corruption and non-corruption acts where we won't do business with corrupt officials in foreign countries. Well, we say we won't, right? Where
Sorry,
other
it's
countries,
funny.
yeah, other countries don't put those stipulations in place. Business is business. It's transactional. It's pragmatic. It's not ideological. So when I watch our currency decline, that's a big part of what frustrates me. The other thing that is a sign for me is when we see education be something that is driven by policy.
The research, the attack on research, even if you don't like the DEI, which I can understand, look, there's a lot there that we're not going to tackle, but the attack on research and the brain drain that comes from restricting the brightest people in the world who once saw the U.S. as a beacon from coming here is a serious concern.
When you attack universities, when you start to use funding, and when you start to use banking and funding as penalties, when we seized Russian assets, as an example, in support of Ukraine, you can't do that. If you seize someone else's money because they put their money in your bank in good faith, and then you seize their money because you disagree with them, all that does is tell everybody else out there,
don't put your money there.
Don't put your money in that bank, because if they disagree with you, they're going to take your money. And that's exactly what China did. They pulled their money out of American banks, decreasing the power of the American dollar. But you're exactly right. These are signs for me, because it's not something that affects us today. It's something that affects us for the next 5 years, 12 years, 18 years or more. When you attack liberal institutions, when you attack schools of thought, when you reduce research, when you use funding as a penalty or as a reward. I mean, I wasn't happy even when we were like in our 20s or in high school, and they started talking about whether or not you can say one nation under God. I didn't understand why that was a thing. And now I realize that calling into question education at all has incredible long-term impact.
Yeah, for me too, the watching the educational institutions be attacked and then watching them acquiesce to the demands is very concerning for me. I keep my eye more on civil rights issues. So as rights begin to be taken away, and it's not necessarily as they begin to be taken away, but it's as they are taken away and nobody says anything.
I think there are many signs that we should all be paying attention to, and there's personal signs too. And every one of us is seeing signs in our personal lives that show us the trajectory that we're on is unnerving. At the very least, it's not confident. We don't know where it's going. It could go up, it could go down, and nobody likes to gamble for real. And that's essentially what we all have to do right now, is either gamble or stand up. And one of the ways that we've always talked about, like standing up, that doesn't involve a sign or an Instagram selfie, like you said. One of the ways that we've always talked about really stepping up is voting for that third party. What happens when we have a record-breaking voter turnout and a record-breaking amount of voters for a third party?
Yeah.
It still means that one of the other two parties is going to win. But right now, everybody goes to the polls thinking, I don't want to waste my vote. So they vote not for who they want, but for their second or third choice.
Well, and I think that's a good point, also is that if we talk about sort of removing a partisan voice from our universities, right, from liberal institutions, we don't want to live in a country where kind of like the loudest, wealthiest voice wins. And I think that's sort of the danger. And if the president, let's say, is not the party that you like, you're not going to like anything they do, right? Unless they're doing something that personally serves you. And that's also not the way we sort of make decisions, And I think that's complicated. I think the university example is a great one where civil rights has to be a foundational bottom line of us as citizens of this country. And that's always true. And there always has to be a conversation about what is a defense of free speech? How do we protect people's rights while also not making it a partisan argument of my side's going to win and so your side has to pay? And I think that's also, what a lot of people don't understand and are still trying to negotiate around what we believe,
Back to the leaving America part. If one chooses to leave America, there's only a certain number of places that they may want to go if they want to continue to be in one of the superpower options, right? You can think that China's on the rise, maybe they want to go there. If you're thinking about your economic stability and you're concerned about your investments in the US declining, then you would want to place them into a rising competitor, right? So then the options are the EU. And is the EU really better off than the US? Like trying, because I think people hear this and they're like, it's hyperbolic, right? For some, it's like, well, can I really root my life? Many people can't. The people who can. So like, I'm curious, because I had this conversation, my father's in finance, and we sort of do this, our dinner table speculation is, how is the world going to collapse? And if so, what do you do about it, right? And his perspective is that every country besides Germany has a massive amount of debt. The US's debt, especially with the big, beautiful bill, is skyrocketing. Our mutual friend Tom Bilyeu is like, this is going to guarantee that the US is going to go bankrupt. And in that becomes this increasing divide between the rich and the poor. And when the poor are poor enough, then massive civil unrest happens and no one is safe. You can't have a huge economic divide. It's just not possible. You need a functional and thriving middle class for an economy and a society to be safe and to be healthy. So is Europe better off in that regard if everyone is in debt? Or is it like, because there's so much turmoil, some people will say, well, there's just this turmoil and there's no real path through it. I'm curious.
Well, I would say that your foundational argument is flawed.
Okay.
Because it's not necessarily about going to another competitor. Think of it like if you're a superstar athlete, you don't just go to your rival. You don't especially go to your rival right away, because to do that creates all sorts of secondary and tertiary issues that become difficult, right? What's your contract rate going to be? How are people going to view you? What's your fan base opinion, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't go to a superpower. So you're not going to leave the United States to go to China. Please, whatever camera is looking at me, which camera is looking at me? That camera's, do not leave the United States to go to China. If there's anything that we should have learned in the last 6 months or so, it's that China has zero problem detaining you just because you're an American. You're not going to thrive in China. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do business with Chinese businesses from a safe place like Switzerland, but you don't go to fucking China. You don't leave the United States to go to a competitor. You leave to go to a more stable, there's no place better. No place is better than any other place, but you can find a place that's going to be more stable, say, for the next 10 or 15 years. While the United States will be unstable for the next 10 or 15 years. You can go to Portugal, you can go to Costa Rica, you can go to Switzerland, you can go to Croatia, you can go to any number of these places where they're not better than the United States, but the stability for the next 10 or 15 years will look differently. And then one of the beautiful things about being American is that we still have a strong passport. We still have a strong currency for now. That could change. Well, conveniently, it takes about 10 years to change your citizenship. So you could go to another country, not to give up your American citizenship, but to gain a second citizenship.
Just to keep options open.
Just to keep options open. And guess who gets to keep whatever second citizenship you gain? Your children. So you're literally giving your children additional options, right? And that's how professionals in the intelligence world see it. It's not a matter of finding what's better right now. It's a matter of what can I do now to give me more options in an uncertain future.
Croatia?
I've heard nice things.
I mean, I've been there. I actually went on a USO tour. I did a USO tour several years ago, so I got to see army bases all over the world, which was really amazing. Croatia is beautiful.
Portugal's nice.
I was not on an army base in Portugal. I was in Djibouti.
Not so nice.
I was in the Middle East. It was,
Beautiful or not beautiful is not really what I'm talking about.
Well, some people think like Croatia, and it's like, what's that like? But there are also like picturesque, enjoyable,
for sure,
beautiful things. It's
not, on the cusp of
like a lot of people hear like that, and they think like war, and
absolutely.
it's
Oh yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. But it's on the verge of becoming a member of the EU on using the euro. Like it's on the rise in a lot of ways. It's a place where not just Americans, but successful people, digital nomads from all over the world, are kind of flocking in that direction because of the low cost of living, of the stability, especially stability for being a foreigner in Croatia, which, never forget, when you're an American and you leave the United States, you're not a local in that country. You are a foreigner in that country. In the United States, we don't treat foreigners very well. In other countries, it's the opposite. A lot of countries treat foreigners very, very well because they see foreigners as an injection point for a foreign currency into their economy. Whereas here, we just see foreigners as people who speak funny.
Are we on the verge or already moving into a third world war?
I want your opinion on this because I know my opinion on this.
I would say no. Do I think China is going to take Taiwan? Yes. Do I think Russia's and Ukraine is going to end up the way everybody would like it to? No. But the world war where we are all involved, no, I don't think so. I think there are certain countries that will take other countries, but I think, especially right now, I don't think the former allies will get involved the way they did in World War II.
And I would agree with Jihi's answer in terms of traditional World War conceptual thinking. People think of a world war as Axis and Allies.
Yeah.
People think of it like World War I and World War II.
I mean, we're done with trench warfare, we would hope, although...
Or not at all. It's in Ukraine, alive and well in Ukraine.
But that's what I thought, you know.
Isn't that crazy?
And the reason I'm asking is because I think a lot of people, myself included, thought we were sort of beyond these hot wars with trench warfare and sort of some of the what feels almost medieval that you see only in World War II movies. And yet there have been these hot spots that have sprung up around the world that make people feel like we're increasingly unstable.
So I'm of the opinion that World War III will look nothing like World War II, and that we are very likely in the early stages, if not in full out World War III as it is now.
This is a divide in the couple.
Correct. This is where we see it differently. And that's because I don't actually know why that is. Jihi just has a very, for all the villainy that lives inside her.
I still have hope.
She still has hope. And I'm absolutely
Well, actually, I'd
practical
like
on
to
this.
know how each half of this couple interpreted Iran. That was not a fun week. You know, with the U.S., I don't know, knee deep,
Yeah.
you know, in Iran. So what happened? What was dinner like that week in your house?
I know that I can't affect any of what's going on in the world right now. And so I usually take things from the perspective of, this is really interesting. And then I ask Andy his opinion. So Andy gets his opinion asked a lot. But but the interesting things I thought it was really dangerous for both Israel and the United States, because I feel like I feel like we were underestimating what Iran might do. And I don't think that it's over. I think that Iran plays a long game because it can. And it worries me now what the consequences might be for Israel in the future.
It was an interesting day for us because I think we were surprised to see that the United States would send American troops into harm's way in Iran.
No, I wasn't surprised.
Also done without a larger conversation. I mean, that I think was also very surprising.
As soon as Trump said, which was a week before, like, we're thinking about it. I was like, oh, so they're going to bomb Iran. Yeah. Like,
And I wasn't so sure at that point. What I do think that what Jihi's saying is the most interesting piece of it is that the bombing of Iran was less interesting actually than the manipulation of the American president. And that was what was so powerful. Because, and
Well, he's easily manipulatable because when you have someone who is sensitive, who is volatile, who does not like to be humiliated,
Right.
and doesn't do well with international trash talking, which is the currency of Iran. Yeah, it's a real, that's like a firecracker in a barrel.
And then to think that we did all that for questionable outcomes
yeah.
is tough. And I think that's what we agree on for sure, is just what actions are we taking right now that are really benefiting the American people? What actions are we taking? What expenses are we incurring that are actually making for a bigger, stronger American future for our children and for our children's children?
I mean, my favorite thing was that Sacha Baron Cohen just kept posting clips of The Dictator because literally the whole movie was playing out in real time. Like he just kept posting clips.
I mean, it was a prophetic movie.
It was.
Tell us about the divide in your perspective about World War III and how you see the future of war playing out.
So I think it's because I think a lot of it's tied to the fact that I'm former military and Jihi is not. And from my experience in the military, what I've learned is that the military is a giant brainwashing engine. And once you're in it, the system is so effective at basically forcing you to believe or forcing you out. But the system is very powerful. So once you're in it, everybody's hungry to use their skills. Everybody's hungry to fly their plane, drop their bomb, shoot their gun.
You don't want to just wash the plane. You want to fly it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people celebrate, take the fight to the enemy. And I'm just like, there's other ways to resolve things besides taking the fight to the enemy. And especially when you're talking about, you know,
And that's
lives
what all
being
those
lost and
flame emojis are for on Signal, so that our government can be like, "Go get them, boys." Sorry, side note.
but it's fair, but it's valid, right? And that's what we've become now. We've become so disconnected from what war really is because we've been riding the benefit of technology for so long. Now we can just launch a drone. Even Ukraine now is launching drones. We're investing in drones. It just dehumanizes conflict, which makes us that much more eager to engage in conflict. What we don't realize is that on the back end of the conflict, there's all sorts of economic benefits that make it so that the powers that be want more conflict. They want to sell more guns, they want to do more bullying, and it's really, really difficult. So what we've learned through the schools of military is that there's interstate war and intrastate war. Interstate war is when I go to war with you and you're a different national, like you're a sovereign nation. Interstate war is expensive. Interstate war creates political backlash, creates international backlash. It's difficult and costly and ugly to do what Russia did to Ukraine. Intrastate war, conflict that exists inside of a sovereign state, is much easier to manipulate. That's what you had in Libya. That's what you had in Syria. In some arguments, that's what you have inside Gaza Strip. You have a conflict inside of a country, and then those conflicts are so much easier to fund, to participate with a shadow hand, to capitalize on without putting your own troops and your own weapons at risk. So because of the shift in attitude at a geopolitical level, people want more intrastate war. Just like every venture capitalist is looking for the new high ROI business, every global power competitor is looking for the next highest ROI intrastate conflict, whether that's happening in Africa or South America, or whether it's happening in the Caribbean islands, or whether it's happening here in the United States. They're looking for a place where a country's at war with itself, because then all you do is pour fuel on the fire and benefit from the outcome.
First of all, I don't like this game we're playing. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Because you know what I'm thinking about? The people that usually sit in these chairs are people talking about collective consciousness. And we're talking about that, like, God is overseeing everything, and we're all just like sparkly light, and we're just like an embodiment. We're just a physical body having a spiritual experience is the goal.
That's a lot of our episodes lately.
And it's like a lot of like, I almost died, but then God told me come back so that I can save the world. So like, I like those games, you know? And I like the games where it's like, we're all living in the Matrix, but like everybody just wants what's good, and like even murderers are hurt. And so like, just, you know, like a liberal, open, loving consciousness. Like there's no gender. We're all just beings.
Orbs of light that are just happen to be in human suits.
I like that game of like, take lion's mane and you'll feel better.
I think a lot of people like that game.
It's a good
Which
game.
is what makes it so
I mean, I don't like this
easy.
part of the Matrix, meaning like I believe this is true. I also do believe like this is all sort of like a projection and we're like receiving all this information from the universe. But yeah, these are negative energies, not you. But, you know, when we talk about these things, it's like, I believe that like what is, kind of like subsuming all of this is sort of a spark of like goodness and holiness and like, oh my gosh, we all exist and we have consciousness, right? And the notion that we've evolved as, this species, to be having these kinds of elaborate and complicated, it's like a lot of people want to check out from it, hence drugs, alcohol, porn, work, like whatever your drug is. So it's very interesting because I think, for a lot of people, this is why people have stopped watching the news. You don't know what to believe. I mean, look, when I stopped reading the New York Times because I couldn't handle the conflict with truth that I often saw, it made my life a lot simpler because I was no longer sifting through and getting outraged and getting sick. And like, I get acid reflux if I read the news and scroll on Instagram, right? So it's like, yeah, so many people just want to like check out from this because it feels
The thing to remember
impossible.
is there are people who want you to check out. You've got to keep that in mind too. Checking out is not taking.
No, I can't even check out.
No, I
you
definitely
have the
think
right
you
to
should check out
out.
because I check out also. And then what I do is I just strategically read.
Check in.
I just strategically check in. Like I'll pull up AP like once or twice a week and be like,
Right.
is there anything big that I missed?
When she's like energized, when she's
Yeah,
been
when
able
I
to put on
have-
her armor
Yes.
to put up with the bullets.
When I have the mental capacity to do so. But
Yeah.
I think that's something else that people need to remember is that when Andy talks about these big powers that are earning money off of war and starting wars, these aren't masses of people.
Yeah.
These are governments, right? And the governments are being controlled by a small group of people. So the majority of people, I believe, because I'm a peace-loving Buddhist, are good and have hope and don't want these things, right? They just want to raise their kids and to be able to feed them and clothe them and educate them and have a nice home for them. I think that's what most people want, have their friends and their neighbors and everybody get along. So I think if the majority of people remember that it's the governments and certain, economic powers that are making these bad decisions, these decisions that do not benefit us, then they can retain the hope that humanity is good and that we can collectively change things. It might take time, it may take a lot of effort, but I mean, part of the reason we shouldn't completely check out is because it's up to us to make these changes. If we completely check out, they're all in power and they make the decisions that they want to.
She's a very good balance for you, sir.
She's
So
an
we're
excellent
together.
balance.
I mean, if you took her away, we would be cycling in war and destruction. And then I wonder, you get off camera, and then I'm very concerned for your mental sanity. But then you can go back and connect with your beautiful wife. And she's, Andrew, let's have some hope together.
Yes.
And what's funny is, it does go back and forth because there are hopeless moments for her too.
Yeah.
But I can't help but think of the experience of parents. And I don't know your children, but my children, I have one that is kind and hopeful and generous, and I have one that is not those things.
Who will be a dictator if allowed?
And when I think about the future, I have to protect one, and I have to protect others from the other. When you look at the world, it's not that different from looking at the family. There are many, many people who need to be protected, who are kind, who are generous, who are open, who are sensitive, and there are a fewer group that you need to protect others from. That group of feisty, ambitious, ruthless people always go much farther in what they can accomplish than the group of sensitive people, because the sensitive people need collective support, they need resources, they need patience, whereas the feisty group will literally take almost nothing and just charge their way forward.
Well,
sometimes.
and for those of us with sensitive children, we would say that those children also have the capacity to
Absolutely.
influence others with their, empathy, their intuitiveness, their connection to something larger that hopefully, they can sort of bring down to us. I mean, there's been people who have been saying this is the age of Aquarius, for decades now, but many people believe there's a shift in consciousness. A lot of people saw COVID as sort of like a wake-up call. So, there's also, I think there's evolution on both sides, right?
What I'm saying is just that the traditional way that we've watched geopolitics play out, there's the person who can influence you to open the door, and that takes time. And then there's a person who just breaks down the door, or the person who just twists the doorknob, sees that it's unlocked, and walks right through. And that has been the person that we have turned into the hero, right? Our action movies, our dramas, our war movies, you name it, are all about bold, risk-taking, assertive people. So we've glorified that attitude, and we've marginalized the sensitive, patient, influential person. We have to decide now, is that how we're going to move forward?
We all have to rewatch Aaron Brockovich.
I mean, what?
That's a statement I
thought
never
you
thought
were
I'd
gonna-
hear.
I thought you were going to name another delightful Julia Roberts movie. Or one of your Sandra Bullock rom-coms that
The
you think will
reason
save
being,
us.
she saw a problem. She took legal action. She pursued a way in order to protect people who needed protecting. No one believed her. She had a lot of resilience. Jihi, how do you see the evolution? You talked about your parents and their background. Do you see it as a change in the collective conscience? And sort of reframe it also as like, if we talk about a lot of the power dynamics profiting off of war, and a few people in government especially who need war in order to fuel this massive economic engine. And without it, there's a huge transition, right?
Yeah.
Like without that, the people employed in those areas, there's a massive amount of displacement and change. Same is true in health. You know,
Yeah.
there's a crazy map that went around recently that showed the number of people employed by state in healthcare and the change in the last 20 years, and basically the increase. Now it's like the largest employer in almost every single state. And so you need sick people in order to employ all the people in healthcare. How do you see sort of the global war machine as it relates to what I, for lack of a better word, would call a collective conscience or consciousness that wants to live in a different way?
I mean, I think the biggest problem with, in particular with people in the United States, is complacency. I think that we have just, as a nation, as the population of the nation of the United States, have become completely complacent. So I think there's lots of people out there who don't want the war machine, who don't want the violence and all of the negative things they're seeing happening, but they're too complacent to do anything about it. They just want to check out. They just want to scroll through Instagram. They just want to go have a drink with their friends. They don't want to think about it. And it's a shame because nothing will change that way. In fact, things will change not the way that they want it to. And that's the route we're going down right now. And I think people just need to wake up and learn how to, to live life properly, you have to make an effort. You cannot coast through life, right? Life is full of change. Life is full of learning. You have to learn the skills of civil discourse. You have to learn how to get along with people who don't have the same opinions. You have to learn how to influence other people to try to get them to see your perspective.
And that's a game. That's the game
Yeah.
that Jihi was saying. It's a dirty, treacherous, tricky game, but it's a game. Whether you want to influence your kids to brush their teeth, or whether you want to influence your in-laws to vote for a different candidate, you have to understand there's a recipe for influence and there's a process for influence, and you might feel sticky in the process, but if it gets you the outcome that you're trying to achieve,
Right.
is it really dirty at all?
Influence doesn't equal bad, right? Like if you influence your children to brush their teeth, that's not bad.
I think it's oppressive.
My daughter would say so too.
So practical takeaways for people who don't want to check out but don't know where to start. What are some ways that they can learn the subtle art of influence, or the not so subtle art?
So I think the first thing that people can work on is just dialogue. There's so much done with these short messages over Instagram or Facebook or texting. People don't actually have conversations anymore. So more in-person conversations. Pick a topic, discuss. Use disagree. Use your phone to look up facts instead of scrolling through your Facebook while you're sitting with your friends. I mean, I think step number one is practice dialogue in person with another human being.
A big part of the reason Jihi and I created the business that we run is because these skills didn't exist. There's no place to go to learn dialogue. I would argue the vast majority of people don't even know the definition of dialogue, how it's different than a conversation, how it's different than an explanation, right? Because dialogue is the exchange of ideas. So you can't just sit there and be spoken to and call that a dialogue, even though that's what many, college professors tend to think they're doing, is we're going to have a dialogue here today, folks. No, you're going to talk to a classroom of 150 people and they're not going to talk back, and maybe you'll get 5 questions about what you're saying, not an exchange of new ideas. And dialogue is very powerful because in a proper dialogue creates a sense of relationship between two people. When I hear your position on something and you hear my position on something, even if we disagree, we both feel heard. That triggers a sense of connection in our brain. That triggers the opening for persuasion and influence. You can't persuade or influence people without that opening. The way that we see all this mass propaganda take over, like you talk about, and the way that we see this mass influence take hold is because people are pulling on emotional triggers, which is why you create these echo chambers of the far left and the far right. You already know what words will trigger emotions, and then you can just feed in whatever you want to feed in next once you have that person triggered.
Well, and I think that also sort of leads to, your social media is not where you should be getting news.
Right.
No.
And the
I have-
amount of people who do it is
Well, I mean,
phenomenal.
look, I have teenagers, so I kind of dismissed it as like, oh, well, when I was that age, I mean, look, I was reading the newspaper. I was learning to read the newspaper, and like that was a thing that I wouldn't, necessarily encourage my kids to do. But I think, like, what if you did not listen to the news that was on social media? Because also, and there's some really fascinating studies about this, the proportion of perspectives that are reflected on social media is often driven by bots. It's often driven by countries like Qatar. So, what you're actually seeing is not even a proportional representation of even what most people are thinking about or needing to learn about. So I love this notion of also like give up the notion of getting news from social media and some of those legacy media places that you used to rely on. Guess what? They're not impartial. And if you want to read what your perspective is, great, go those places. But if you want to read what an actual kind of reflection of perspectives is, you do have to seek out, like you said, places like AP News, places that are kind of reporting from a more old school news reporting place. We spoke to Connie Chung here, and I remember that was one of our questions. And she was saying that, like, even during Watergate, it didn't matter if you were a Republican or if you were a Democrat. You saw what was happening, and this is not okay. We do not tap phone, like all those things. But it was so interesting because now it feels like I don't even know how reporters are supposed to report because of the larger, so I think that's also an important kind of practical tip.
Yeah, and reading more than one news source. I would never advocate for somebody to just rely on one news source. You have to have multiple. So if you want the New York Times, fine, but also read Reuters or AP News. And then also, I would even suggest read something that's a conservative news source.
You can be uncomfortable without it being triggering.
Yeah.
You can be mad without it being PTSD, right?
Yes.
Like, what does it feel like to learn to tolerate? And look, I reached a certain point where it's like, I do not need to talk to people about X, Y, or Z. So like we all have those points. But generally speaking, if you're learning about the economy, if you're learning about what's going on in government, you get to learn how to tolerate being uncomfortable and saying, they have their reasons, but I'm not just going to siphon it off and be like, I'm blocking you from my feed.
I mean, even on this podcast, it's interesting. We get comments of listeners who are like, I don't agree with every guest. Great.
Yeah.
Don't agree with every guest.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you should listen to every episode necessarily.
I don't agree with Jonathan most of the time, and here we are.
But I think it's important to be able to hear at least part of someone's perspective and not just be like, no, you're wrong. That only divides us. We don't get anywhere in that.
You don't grow.
Yes.
And that's the thing that Jihi and I mean, I'm less worried about division and more worried about growth, because I had a very wise CIA friend who once told me, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I didn't understand that at the time, but I understand it much better as I get older. Because when you stop growing, when you become complacent, when you just coast, I mean,
or don't take in any new ideas and just say, this is my perspective. I mean, that's very hard because, everyone also talks about that in science. They're like, this is the science, but science is constantly changing and evolving and learning new things.
Correct.
Yes. So same thing with dialogue. If you can't take in other people's perspectives and understand where other people are coming from, how can you have any new ideas about how to get better?
How does that relate, though, to people who may be like so far on a spectrum as to be somewhat radical, or like people who are like, they are drinking the blood of children? Like, where does it end?
That becomes a personal question about what the level of effort is that you want to put into it.
Yeah.
And if it was my child that was drinking the blood of children, I would have a lot more effort that I'd be willing to put into it.
Because you'd want to connect. You don't want to sever the connection.
But what it is, I mean, there are people that you just have to, again, I'm the very pragmatic one. There are either productive or destructive relationships that you're in at any given time. And you want to continue to contribute to productive relationships because they are productive. Productive to who? Productive to you. But then there are also destructive relationships. And every ounce of effort that you put into a destructive relationship is destructive to who? To you. So if you could take back your resources from all the destructive relationships and put them into the productive relationships, where would you go? Stop being obligated to your mom. Stop answering the phone when your sister's calling to complain. Stop worrying about your old college friend who has no hope. Stop dealing with these people. You're only dealing with them because you feel like you have to. You're a bad person if you ignore them. That's not how I was trained to see it at all. How I was trained to see it is you have a certain number of gold coins in your purse. And for every gold coin you put into a destructive relationship, you lose the return on investment if you would have put into productive.
Therapy with Andy. Now he sounds like all the mystics, right? He sounds like every transcendental psilocybin tripper we've had. Like, don't give away your energy, man. Like, keep it for yourself.
You have to prioritize yourself.
Correct.
He has the hair of a mystic. He should be able to speak like one.
One day.
I mean, what's interesting is that I think a lot of men speak like this, and we know that from therapists and female therapists, they also speak like this. But what we've heard and Mayim talks about is that women are conditioned sometimes to not have that perspective, to be much more accommodating, to give up their own wants and desires, to be supportive.
I don't know if it's that a lot of men say that. I think a lot of men, in many cases, and you can tell me if you disagree, a lot of men have the liberty to be able to, I don't want to say abdicate, but to be able to delegate emotional labor to women, because we tend to culturally be expected to do that, especially if you come from a traditional or patriarchal society or culture or religion. It's really, kind of built in. So yeah, we're the ones who get the autoimmune disorders. We're the ones, who are kind of like bearing the brunt of a lot of that. And yeah.
Well, Jihi, did you share his gold coin, limiting your gold coin expenditure model?
I had to learn that because I was raised in a patriarchal household where the women took on everything. And you were expected to hold space for everybody, where Andy can just literally walk away from a conversation and nobody says anything. I mean, whether anybody would have said anything or not, I would have felt guilty about it because of the way I was raised. So over time, I was in a bad relationship. And it was after that I learned you cannot change everybody. That maybe there's a person that can change another person, but that's not necessarily you, and you can walk away. And so it took me 7 years and a lot of debt and an anxiety disorder to learn that you only have a certain number of coins and you need to invest those wisely.
And now nobody gets Jihi's coins. It's hilarious because she just avoids everybody, even the people she really, really loves. She's like, I just don't want to spend that coin now.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the process to get there. You mentioned an anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
Tell us about the process.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder like the second week I was at the CIA.
This is actually a phenomenal story.
Yeah.
She was a copious vomiter.
Yes, it was terrible.
No connection to
was nervous to eat on their first date
Yeah.
because she
Yes.
might have thrown up all over him.
from anxiety.
Yes, from anxiety. Like our first kiss, he was like, "You're not gonna throw up on me, are you?"
How else do you know you really like someone?
Exactly.
Okay, well, hold on one second.
Yes.
You're going into a job
Yes.
that requires an enormous level of stress, secrets, and they didn't sort of say maybe this isn't constitutionally appropriate for you?
So none of us knew because other than my physical symptoms, I was handling it well. So it was very functional.
Also, this was a while ago. People weren't
Yes.
so into talking
Oh,
about these
yes.
things.
Oh, yeah.
No. And even with all the psychological batteries that they give you, and I talked to a psychologist and all of that, none of it came up because I didn't know I had it. So I'd ended my relationship, and 6 months after the end of that relationship, I was sick, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I just knew I was having trouble keeping food down. So I had all these tests done. Nothing came up. So I started my new job. And then it was when Andy asked me out on a date, and he called to pick me up. And I was like, I can't go. And he was like, oh, we could just get coffee. I was like, I can't. And then I went and threw up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have an anxiety disorder. So I diagnosed myself. I go to my doctor, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then I went to the agency because I ended up in the ER because I couldn't hold food down.
Okay.
I just wasn't.
So couldn't eat at all.
Couldn't eat, couldn't drink. I just was throwing up all the time.
Andy's love makes people want to die.
It
I'll
was
just
really
waste
hard.
away to nothing because of his love.
Yes.
It was really hard at the time for me too. I was
I know,
like, this is a bad sign.
I know, poor guy.
It's a bad sign.
But, I missed a few days of work and I didn't have a phone number to call. And so I was like, well, security's going to find me no matter what. You can't just disappear from the CIA. So finally the HR lady calls me and I tell her, and I think I'm done. I'm like, just like you said, there's no way CIA is going to keep me on with an anxiety disorder. And immediately they were like, you can see our in-house psychologist. She'll hook you up with an outside therapist who's cleared, who knows where you work, and we'll put you on an easy assignment. We'll make space for you to go to your therapy appointments twice a week. And I was like,
I mean, they trained you, so they
amazing.
don't want to lose you because
Yes.
they put all this money and time into getting you there.
exactly.
And
I don't know, people. That makes me nervous, though.
when they see,
Because then you're being sent to places all over the world
So-
in life-threatening situations.
Every time I went overseas, I had to go talk to a psychiatrist before I left to make
Same.
sure that I was ready. Yeah.
Before every podcast, we have a little consult.
Yeah.
CIA sees it as a benefit,
Thank
a
you.
benefit professionally and a benefit organizationally to them to have people with high anxiety. Those are the people who are going to identify a risk before the risk is present.
Stop it.
Those are the people who are going to marry the job.
Yeah.
Those are the people who will not say no when you're asked to go do something like we were asked to do for Shadow Cell.
My anxiety just got me this podcast. I think it's a work for the CIA and be a secret agent.
So you get the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
You're now getting treatment.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
So I just did all the things that you were supposed to do. You know, I made sure I couldn't sleep. So, you know, I started taking medication for like all the GI issues that I had that were caused by the anxiety. I started trying to put weight back on. I started exercising. I
Wasn't dating.
wasn't dating. I avoided Andy like the plague for like 2 months. We worked on the same floor. And I was like, I would not go by where I thought his office was until one day we ended up in an all hands meeting. So like the whole
Couldn't
floor
avoid
was
him.
there. And I couldn't avoid him. And I thought, oh, I got to say something. Because up until then, every time I tried to write him like an I'm sorry email, I would want to go throw up. So there was nothing. So
That's how you know it's love.
yes, exactly.
Butterflies are next level with these two.
Yes. So at the all hands, it was so quick. I didn't have time to get anxious. So I was like, I'm really sorry. And then he was very kind to me.
He's like, I want that wounded bird.
I know.
It was quite the
She
opposite.
can't fly away. She's holding out one
So-
functioning wing.
So women's perspectives aside, let's talk about the men's perspective for a second.
Poor Andy.
Because when a girl completely avoids you in the workplace, immediately you're like, oh shit, am I going to get reported for HR? Am I about to get reported for sexual harassment because I called her and said, do you want me to pick you up? And she said no. And then I kind of pushed and I was like, do you want to just do tea or coffee? And did she see that as like an affront on? And I was like, oh shit, I'm waiting for the day that I get called in by my supervisor and handed like a letter that says you've been accused of sexual harassment. And I'm just like, oh, and especially at the time when that kind of stuff was really ill-defined and nobody knew what to expect. So for 2 months, I was terrified.
Both of you are suffering with massive amounts of anxiety. It's contagious. How do you go from that to learning not to give your coins away?
So Andy was really helpful because Andy kind of doesn't give a shit about other people. So
It's a glowing review for me today.
You should bring her on all your podcasts.
so he was really helpful in helping me heal, and you know, being somebody I could really talk to and be there for. But he also he helped me grow as a person. He was this great model for me in how to be confident in yourself and stand your ground, and you don't have to feel obligated. That was something we had a lot of conversations about because I come from a family of obligation. And it's just very traditional, right? You were obligated to do certain things as part of the family. And he was like, you don't have
like
to do
suffer and be miserable.
that. Yeah, it's like show up to everything and be involved in everybody's conversation.
So you knew, I would guess, you knew what people expected of you before it was ever spoken.
Oh, yeah. And you would go above and beyond just in case.
Because you knew if you said no to this person that this is going to be their reaction, and so anytime anyone is asking anything of you, you're immediately going into preventative
Jonathan,
mode.
think about what it's like when you've been at like formal family meals at my house where like the women never sit.
Yes.
They never sit. And we serve the man first. And like, that's literally, it's what we're trained for. And when we're not like cooking and serving, we're cleaning up or making sure the kids are okay. Like, that's what it's like. It's so funny that they have to ask. It's just like, you pre-anticipate everyone's needs and anxiety. Keep
Yes.
this one away from that one. Don't serve him a second drink because he's going to get weird, right? Like, it's like all the things.
No, come on. This is not only a female condition. This is a condition of anyone who has a high level of scanning sensitivity, I had to work very hard to get my parents' expectations out of my head, especially in my early 20s and 30s, because I knew exactly what they wanted. And I knew if I said no to them, this is going to be the response, and they're going to think that I'm saying this. So I think a lot of people can relate to this. So you're growing and changing, but can you tell us a bit about the process of, do you start to then identify when the should is happening, or when you start using that anticipatory quality to act? And are you sort of, I guess, practical CBT, expanding the time between the stimulus and response?
Yeah. So I started practicing saying no more often. And in the beginning, that really looked like me saying yes and then calling back not calling back to say no. That's giving myself too much credit. But saying
Send
yes,
an email.
and then sending a text with some kind of lame excuse to get out of it. That's how it started. And it was very embarrassing for me because I didn't like doing that. But over time, as I felt the benefits of having my own time and having my own life back and not having to do things that I felt obligated to do, that positive reinforcement started helping me to be like, you know what, I can't. And I would still make up these lame excuses because I still felt guilty. But over the years, I mean, I've known you
as long as you've been
17
married.
years now. Yeah. So over 17 years, I am now at a point where I can say, I don't want to do that.
And I want to give Jihi credit where credit is due, but I also want to make sure that practically what she has done is she's taken a hammer instead of a scalpel. And momentum was at the core of it all. Once she saw the benefit of saying no once or twice, she kind of got hooked. She got hooked on
There's a rush.
on the better sleep,
Yeah.
additional reading time, right?
Yes.
House projects that she's been putting off, and she just got hooked on it. And then all of a sudden, everybody was no. And then all of a sudden, she just stopped taking phone calls. And then she stopped checking emails. And then she was just like,
And she moved out of the house.
and
I wish.
There's like an element of it that I would never claim is helpful or healthy, that we're still working through, where I'm just kind of like, you do still have to live in the same house as the kids. Because we have had the conversation about a second apartment where she can go stay at the apartment, and the apartment can also be our office at the same time. And then I have to
I like that idea. I can come meet her for tea. She and I can have ladies' time.
No, she's going to say no. She won't answer the door when you get there.
But that's where we kind of are now. And when I have to pick between the two, for sure I pick this 100% of the time, because she always has time for the people that she truly, truly cares about, which makes us feel really good, right? It makes the kids feel good. It makes me feel good. It makes our closest friends feel good, because they understand Jihi will make space for us, but she's not going to make space for our problems. So we've learned not to give her, Jihi's not the one you go to bitch. I'm the one you go to when you want to complain. Jihi's the one you go to when you want to have a hopeful conversation about something.
It's actually quite profound, the amount of energy you get back, and profound how much energy gets drained when we're in those interactions that are not fueling us.
Right. And I think right now I've gotten to a point where I have like a mental calculator of my energy for the day. Like if I wake up tired or if I wake up really energetic or whatever, like I have this mental calculator, and then I look at my day, or when people ask me to do things, I start to calculate, am I going to have enough energy at the end of the day, or am I going to burn myself? And I think that has been a really helpful tool for me along the way to not overextend. And I'm very careful not to overextend anymore.
And just to tie it to the book for just a second, this book was 4 years in the making, not because it took us so long to write it, but because CIA fought with us for 3 years about publishing this book.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I very much appreciate that you read it and that you enjoyed it, because it took so much effort to get it across the finish line, because we were fighting the U.S. government to get it published. And the reason I bring it up is because it's such a strong example of Jihi's coins. She wrote the book, she participated in the writing of the book, she submitted it like she was supposed to, and then CIA came back and said, everything you wrote is classified.
Ugh.
Wow.
And once they said that, Jihi was like, I know that's bullshit, because we took great care to make sure that nothing in here violates sources or methods. And then CIA just came back with a blanket statement. Everything's classified. You cannot publish. So Jihi went into her hole, and she's like, I'm not going to participate anymore.
I don't
CIA
like
said no, and I don't want to deal with that, because I don't want to think about jail time. I don't want to think about lawsuits. I don't want to think about all this stuff. I had the opposite effect. I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
So then I push back, I argue with them via email, I go up to CIA's headquarters, I argue with them in person, I end up hiring an attorney, and I'm like, somebody needs to look at this because I'm willing to publish this book without their approval, which will violate contractual agreements, but not, like criminal agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So Jihi came back and she was like, I don't want you to cause all this ruckus. So she started getting a little bit more involved and a little bit more involved. And eventually she did everything that she thought was reasonable and fair, took it to CIA, and they came back and said, no, it's classified. And then she lost it at that point. She was like, this is bullshit. And then the full force of Jihi came into effect and she charged forward. And really, that's what got us across the
And I
finish
was like,
line.
we're going to sue you.
Her willingness to sue CIA through a cutout attorney.
Yeah.
When that news got to them, they were like, you know what?
It's not so classified
It's not so
anymore.
classified.
No, and I think this is a good kind of button, I mean, while I enjoyed the backstory, which is, kind of like, I mean, at least I have a pre-published edition where it talks about it, and from what you said, I will say it doesn't suffer, meaning I don't know what all you would have liked to include, but I have to say that, I mean, it's fantastic, like in terms of the arc that you go on, and I don't feel like you're missing, meaning the story is still fleshed out enough. And I know that you had to create some fictional things, and I kept being like, I wonder where this is and I wonder what they mean. But it doesn't suffer in terms of the arc of the story that you tell, and all of the meat is there. So I'm glad that you struggled through kind of like getting it pushed through, but also whatever was removed, it's a fully fleshed out kind of experience that you take us on. So
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to my wife. Thank you for coming out of your hole in enough time to get it across the finish line. Because I would have just banged my head against a brick wall. She's the only one that knows how to actually break through that place.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for coming. Thank you for spending your coins with us today.
You're welcome.
Really, it's a pleasure to speak with both of you.
And where can people find out more about all the other incredible, fun work that you do?
Absolutely. You can find us at our website anytime, everydayspy.com. Our book Shadow Cell is available everywhere that books are sold. So you'll see it in the airport. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Barnes & Noble, any place in the US, the UK, all over the world. And on social media, you'll find us at Everyday Spy.
The book will also be found anywhere you go next when you relocate.
That's true, too.
So many new things. I'm back in my seat now.
We changed everything for people who are watching. We were all in the wrong seats.
Two guests. You know what? It was actually very comfortable. This table was a good size for them to sit there. I did not enjoy sitting in your seat.
What? Really? What?
No.
Why?
It just felt weird.
I liked sitting across from you because I could see your face.
I don't know, I had to keep checking my hair. I had to keep turning. This way I can be like, oh, needs a fluff.
You know what? I noticed you were a lot less distracted sitting in this seat because you are not looking at the monitor. Right now in your seat, you're basically just like front facing the... Can we turn the TV off? Do we need that television?
No, we do. We need it.
No, we don't.
Because knowing me, I'll have like one hair sticking out this way and I'll want to fix it.
Follow us on Substack, Mayim Bialik's Breakdown on Substack, because we're going to do a behind the scenes of what the studio looks like and what I have to compete with in order to get...
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I think I would have been good working for the CIA had I not been a famous television actress.
Yeah, you would have a really hard time now.
Hedy Lamarr did it. She was a very famous starlet and she spied during World War II.
Or it could be no one would suspect you because they would be like, oh, why is this TV actor in Barcelona investigating something that she has no business in? You'd be like, I'm just learning about a TV role that I'm playing.
Oh, I could have such good cover. I could be like, I'm here doing press for my movie that doesn't exist. I'm doing a photo shoot.
I got really excited about the idea of creating backstories for people, and like we could build websites for the businesses that they run. The business that Mayim runs is a miniature cat creating she creates little cat miniatures, Cabbage Patch for miniature cats.
It also didn't occur to me how much more elaborate because of computers, and we didn't even get to talk about AI.
You have to build
fully.
a whole social media backstory.
Right. Like if someone's like, oh, my cover is that I'm a blah, 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 they'd be like, well, you have to have a website and you have to have a this. And it
you have
really
to have
is
fake friends that AI can create for you.
It's creating many, many jobs. CIA people, they're just creating so many jobs.
the whole world is talking about all the jobs that AI is going to take away.
And we just added some.
We just created some. That's important.
I have a friend, and we always suspected that her husband worked for the CIA.
Oh, this is the friend that you were telling me
I can't-
he's a professor, but he's like constantly traveling around the world. You're like,
Strange places.
I'm an I teach accounting, but somehow I'm in Dubai for like 80% of the year. And you're like, wait a second, you either have a second family
And he's very-
or you're a spy.
He's very mild-mannered. He's a lovely man. He's very
He has
bright.
3 families,
He's-
one in Morocco, one in Dubai.
And his wife is like, if he's getting paid, I would know. Like, I'm the family accountant. It's not coming in through regular accounts. I'm like, well, he's got secret offshore accounts. It's been a running joke for approximately 30 years.
You never know what people are up to.
You never know what people are up to. Trust no one. That's what Jihi says.
She doesn't even trust Andrew. Look, if people haven't listened to our first Andrew Bustamante episode,
He's much more mild-mannered with his wife in the room.
totally different guy.
He's so sweet with her.
And there's such a good balance for each other.
Yeah, they're very interesting balance.
Sometimes when you text me, I feel like I'm going to vomit. That's how I know the emotions are real.
I think you and I should play them in the movie version of this.
I'm going to become an actor just so I can play Andrew Bustamante because I just want to wear the wig that is his hair.
His hair's amazing.
I think we should get a wig that looks like that and just to see what I would look like.
I think he recently said somewhere that like, oh, people would love me no matter what my hair looked like. I'm like, really? I don't know. It's like a big part of the appeal for me with the bandana. I love it. They're a really, really fun couple. I'm really glad that we got to speak to both of them. Recommend Shadow Cell, an insider account of America's new spy war. It's very intense, and it really goes through all the twists and turns of their unbelievable life. Specifically establishing this particular cell in an undisclosed country that is hostile to the United States, which they can't name. Okay, from our breakdown to the one we hope you never have, we'll see you next time.
It's Mayim Bialik's Breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or 2.